Hello, this is Erin with the Joy in Pens and Paper, and today I'm going to be swatching my red ink samples. Now, I did have to separate out my red ink samples from my red ink bottles because I have a lot of red, surprisingly. I don't know how that happened, but it did. So I do have 9 red ink samples that I'm going to be swatching using a Kakimori brass brass dip nib. I can speak. And in no particular order, I'm going to start going through these. The first one happens to be a sample that I received from one of my viewers, and this is Waringal Dracula. Let me zoom in. There you can see the red ink right there. I always make a mess on my holder. I'm going to do a swatch to the side. I will do some dabbing for saturation so we can see if there's any shading. And then hopefully I spell Waringal right. And then right over here, I'm going to do some line variations, which you can get just by changing the angle of your grip on a Kakimori nib. And you can get from kind of very bold to very fine. And I just have a white t-shirt off to the side that I use for drying off, wiping off, etc. All right, next one again is a sample from a different viewer, Birmingham Pen Company Rhubarb. Now this one is a little bit on the kind of, I was gonna say magenta, but to me magenta is a very bright color. It's a little of a pinky red, which the Waringal Dracula is looking a little pinky as well. But of course, next to the Dracula, this looks very pink. Wow. Almost like a blush pink. That's interesting. Oh, that's so fascinating. In my swatch book, this is definitely more of a red, and in here, this is coming up much more of a blush pink, like a deep rose. So we'll see that as it dries down. But when I swatch my blush pinks, I might include that in there. Next one is Laban Aries, and this is from an Ink Flight. And with the Ink Flight, they give you kind of a small sample, which is fine. Not complaining, just stating a fact. But this is definitely a brighter red. Dab for saturation. And based on this right here, I would have to go with this as a drier ink than the other two, just with how it came out in the line variation. But the Laban Aries is a little bit more of a blood red than I would say even the Wearing Gold Dracula, which compared to Aries is coming across as a really deep pink. All right, next is Andoryllium Vampire Squid Red. This is another one from an ink flight. I made a big mess this time. Look at that. There, wipe it off. Oop. Get my little saturation. There we go. Now, Andoryllium inks to me feel very lubricated. Vampire Squid. I have not put this one in a pen yet. But yeah, beautiful. Definitely a bright red. All right, next one, Monteverde Pumpkin Cake. This was another sample that was gifted to me by a viewer. This is a very deep kind of I almost want to say burnt orange, but really it's a very deep, maybe burgundy with a brownish undertone. And when it writes, it's this really beautiful, deep, deep, deep red. Again, burgundy. And here you can almost see some yellow coming through. It's fascinating ink, fascinating ink. I have inked this up once in a pen. I really enjoyed writing with it. Only thing I did notice is that it did not clog, there's some kind of gunk in the nib that needed to be wiped off at times. And in my research, that seems to be somewhat common with reds and oranges. So if that does happen to you, don't be alarmed. All right, this is again from Inkflight, Wearing Gold Metamorphosis. I feel like I'm always playing the game Operation, you know, where you put the tweezers in and if you touch the edge, it does a sound. But I feel like when I dip my nib in the samples, it's like playing Operation. And again, this is a similar kind of a burgundy brownish red. Fungal metamorphosis. Hopefully I spelled that right. There we go. It's always fascinating to me how some inks, they, the way they dry down, you can see the grid of the Hobonichi paper versus other inks you can't. It's fascinating. Ooh, the Vampire Squid Red has some gold sheening coming out around the edges there. Look at the beautiful shading. Ugh, I love shading. Love shading. Look at those as they dry. Okay. Now let's move on to our next page. We have a couple more samples. So the next is Van Diemen's Mandarin Duck Wing, which also came in an ink journal. Oop, I didn't cap my last sample. I am realizing none of these did I purchase or pick out. Excuse me, just an observation. So I wonder if subscriptions like Ink Journal, if they make a point to include, actually I should go back, but kind of the different colors of the rainbow, so to speak. Wow, beautiful. And Demons, Mandarin, and this is their bird series. What I love about the bird series, and I haven't bought any bottles, but I love the premise of you can kind of build a bird with getting the inks from the different body parts of the birds, like the chin and the wings and the crest. And in my very limited time with Van Diemen's, I do find these inks to be dry. I'm gonna give them another shot, and I don't know if it's just their bird series, because I had an excellent experience with one of their inks called Tiger Snake, which I'm probably gonna be buying a bottle of. But their bird series inks I have found to be very dry. All right, so next up is Noodler's Black Swan and English Roses. And if anyone wants to wager a guess as to what the last sample is going to be, because I have one more, I dare ya. You actually might be able to get it. All right, Noodlers. It's a long name. Oh no. It's gonna throw, yeah, you know what, is what it is. It's gonna throw off my spacing, but is what it is. Now this ink, Noodler's Black Swan and English Roses, I think is an absolutely gorgeous color. But in my experience, it takes a while to dry down, and that was very difficult to manage when you're using it for planning, taking meeting notes, things like that, things that you can't just leave your book open and, you know, kind of write and go. So the dry time really frustrated me. Now the last one is a shimmer, which is why I'm agitating it. So again, if you want to take a guess, do it now. I'm selfishly doing this series of swatching my ink because I wanted to put my ink in color order. I'm realizing my storage needs a little organization now that I have the collection that I do. All right, so this is Ferris Wheel Press. The Velvet Ballet. This is one that I would consider getting a full bottle for, but I probably won't. I'm glad that I still have the sample amount that I do. But you can already see the shimmer starting to come through. Look at that, lovely. All right, so let me zoom out. You can see all the colors. Yeah, that vampire squid, actually, as it dries here, it's coming across as more of a corally pink, but it has this really beautiful gold sheen around the edges. The Laban Aries gets very dark around the edges, almost black. The Monteverde pumpkin cake actually is on this paper at this time looking like it should have been in the brown family. Warringal Metamorphosis is such a deep, deep burgundy. It's beautiful. But it is, to me, really fascinating that the color of the grid is coming through the ink swatch. Van Diemen's Mandarin Duckwing also has some sheening around the edges. Looks like it might be a little bit of the kind of a grayish color. Yeah, so those are my red ink samples. Next up will be red ink bottles. So thank you for watching. If there's any inks in these samples that really call to you that you would love to try, let me know. All right, bye.